This is Money Talk Radio, and I'm Ellis Martin. Join me now for a conversation with Ken Tonkin, the president and CEO of Tudor Gold. Tudor Gold trades on the TSX Venture Exchange as TUD, and in the U.S. on the OTC as TDRRF. The company's Goldstorm Project in British Columbia, Canada's Golden Triangle, represents one of the largest gold discoveries in the past 30 years. Tudor has identified a staggering mineral resource of 27.9 million ounces of gold equivalent, 2.87 billion pounds of copper, and 128 million ounces of silver. The 17,918 hectare Treaty Creek property, in which Tudor Gold holds a 60% interest, borders the KSM property to the southwest and the Brucejack Mine to the south. The past producing Eskay Creek Mine lies 12 kilometers to the west. Mr. Konkin has over 35 years of geological experience throughout North and South America, as well as Russia. Ken Tonkin worked for Silver Standard for 19 years and managed advanced exploration programs in Argentina, Peru, as well as the Golden Triangle in British Columbia, Canada. Mr. Konkin was appointed the project manager for Pretium Resources after it purchased the Snowfields-Brucejack Project from Silver Standard in 2010. Subsequently, he was instrumental in the discovery of the Valley of the Kings deposit at the Brucejack Lake Mine, an 8 million ounce gold deposit currently in production. Ken, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here today.
Great to be here. Thanks for this invite, just so we can get the Treaty Creek story out to your listeners. I think it's a compelling and important story that most investors need to hear.
Well, I think it is as well, and to be honest with you, I know you've been working on this company for quite a while, and I met you for the first time recently at the mining investment event of the North in Quebec City, and I had no idea what you had in the ground there, and it's outstanding. What I know right now is there are investors, people like myself, many of our listeners that are looking for both a gold and a copper opportunity as these metals head upward on their own, and I'm talking about the commodities, and the equities themselves have not caught up, so I am pleased to point our audience to your project in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. Tell us all about it, Ken.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's one that's currently being written in the exploration phase, where most of the heavy lifting has been done on the heavy drilling. We do have, as you mentioned, a huge gold and copper component, and the poor brother at the table is silver as well. So we can't forget all the silver guys out there. I used to be a silver guy for 20 years with Silver Standard and chased the globe for some of the biggest deposits that could possibly be found, and I think this is one of them. So the compelling story kind of begins, well, we don't have the time for it, but 40 years ago when I was working as a young geologist off this project, had some discoveries then, and joined full time with Tudor Gold Corp in 2019. So just in the last 5 years, we've ramped up our exploration full speed, having up to 8 drills on the project and drilled over 180 drill holes, and currently have approximately 22 million ounces of gold in ground, with another close to 3 billion pounds of copper and another almost 130 million ounces of silver. So clearly one of the largest metal inventories on the planet, and possibly could reach the largest gold discovery in 3 decades, 30 years. So I'm very proud of this work we've accomplished in a short 5 years.
Well, look, Ken, I've never seen numbers like this, and I've been covering the sector for about 25, 26 years. To have almost 28 million ounces of gold equivalent in the ground, and I think 22 million of that is in fact gold, is just insane. It's district size, and you have some mines that are surrounding you. The Eskay Creek, that was in business for quite some time. Skeena, Newmont, you're in the right area, and your stock right now is trading at about 70 cents in Canada and 50 in the U.S. That seems like an opportunity. I can't tell our audience what to do, but hello.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a 5-year low. We're stuck in this downturn cycle that I can't really explain. I just think that every opportunity is always about timing. This one is especially so. But you're right, those aforementioned deposits, I was the guy who did the work with Silver Standard at Brucejack Lake on the deposit that's currently now owned by Newmont to the south of us. We drilled that shortly after we drilled the Snowfields deposit, which is now purchased by Seabridge and been renamed as Mitchell East. Eskay, as you've mentioned, was picked up by Skeena and is going forward with a great success of financing that and possibly be the next producer in Canada coming up. So all the success ratio of best real estate along that KSM line of those elephants, starting from the Kerr, the Sulphurettes, the Mitchell East, Snowfields, and the Iron Cap deposit. We are in line with that deposit, those deposits, with two other discoveries that add to our Goldstorm deposit that you've mentioned to be at almost 28 million ounces of gold equivalent, 27.9 million ounces of gold equivalent, of which is 22 million ounces gold, 3 billion pounds of copper, and with a category of 6 million ounces of the inferred at a higher grade, which means we haven't hit the center of mass yet. The copper is still growing as we speak. We're still expanding the deposit. On this last drill program of this year, we're coming in with great looking core as usual. And we're also, what people don't really appreciate is we're sniping high grade numbers of gold that are late stage events. So what happened is essentially that exact story at Brucejack Lake for me. When I was there in 2009 to 2015, for 7 years, I ran the exploration for Pretium. And during that tenure, we were looking for a large bulk tonnage target just like Goldstorm, but we tripped into a very high grade gold event that I later named in 2010 Valley of the Kings deposit. And that was a fortuitous thing that we predicted to happen on this project, Treaty Creek, but not at the other end where we're drilling. We're at the northeast end of the project, which is an important aspect of the story because there are two other deposits that shoulder this major deposit. So we could have up to 3 massive deposits of this size. This is sub 1 billion tons now. So that's the takeaway. So we've essentially got half the resource of KSM, but double their grade and in one deposit. So that's the takeaway with a very short run to a road, infrastructure, power line, all within eyesight of the project. So very good, compelling infrastructure as well.
So to recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fairly recent 43-101 does not reflect, although it's an outstanding 43-101, and it reflects all the numbers we talked about earlier, but it doesn't show the high-grade intercepts that you found recently, and which puts us into a completely different ballgame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we discovered during the winter break, and we went through the model and actually discovered that we had 3 drill holes that hit a plane, and basically we've named this thing the Supercell because it's like think of it as a nebulous universe expanding, like this big Goldstorm is expanding, and think of a sheet of lightning going off in it as a late stage event. Well, it's exactly what happens is high energy microbreccia is absolutely chock full of very fine grained visible gold, native gold. At the example at Valley of the Kings, it's basically electrum, but this is all native gold, and it occurs at the upper contact of one of our major copper domains. It's the one central domain that we're concentrating on that's going to be the critical element aspect of the exploration called the CS600. So in concert with the major bulk tonnage target, we do have high-grade apophyses that we're actually hunting because it's such a great generator for the economics of the project that you've got this economic arsenal where you go after discrete high-grade zones, take them out first to kill your capex. I call these capex killers. So all these things help when the final, basically the internal rate of return of the project. So yeah, I've got something for everybody, this thing.
So these aren't necessarily anomalous thin veins. They could in fact extend out. You just don't know at this moment, do you? Or do you?
Why shoot one target at a time when you can shoot 3 with one drill hole? Essentially is what we're doing. So just to give an example, this thing ranges between up to 25 meters in width, ranges from 10 to 25 meters, and within it there are a central core of almost 4.5 meters of grades that are better than what they're currently mining at Valley of Kings. You're approaching 21 grams gold. Typically, Brucejack, their cutoff is at 6 grams, but their average grade's around 8 now. So when you look at the third largest gold mine in Canada, mining a very tight model cutoff of only 2 grams underneath their head grade is a very kind of a compelling story that if you can come across stuff that's 10 to 12 to 14 grams over 5, 10, 15 meters, then you have what appears to be the makings of the building blocks of what we discovered to be the Valley of the Kings down to directly south of us. So that's one of the aspects of the project that I think that I can see if we can geologically contain, say, 3 to 4 million ounces, what a great starter that would be, because other companies looking at us would probably say, well, geez, guys, 34 million ounce equivalent, if that's where you're ending off, you're going to need a pretty big checkbook to get involved with that, which is true. But if it has a high grade component to this thing, like these supercells, there are several supercells, several high grade targets. If you can take those out first and enter the world of 3 to 4 million ounces of mineable, extractable gold at a good recovery rate, then mid-tier producers can look at this. Smaller companies can look at this as a starter because it really does aid in the catalyst to get the whole project off the ground. So this is where we're at right now.
So, Ken, as far as I'm concerned, you're transaction ready. But no, that's not the direction you're going right now. You're going to wait.
Yeah, actually, it's one of those double-edged sword things. I mean, where you bring in a strategic partner too early, we have as two other large targets to go after. But the real end game here is to get the word out, like you in Quebec City. The amount of people, when I gave a presentation, it was basically a fireside chat. It just like you and I are casually talking now about the project. We're completely unaware of this thing, being in one of the geopolitically most safe districts, also a very much plug and play precious and base metals environment. And it's very little money needs to be added to the infrastructure, which already exists to put these things in production. So the takeaway was people stopped me after that talk and said, I bought the stock based on what you just told us about it. And that's essentially the struggle here. There's a disconnect, somehow a digital disconnect, that people just aren't aware of some of these great opportunities and stories that are evolving. So this is the biggest reason why we're hitting it hard on the campaign trail, getting out there in front of people, showing people how large this thing can be. We don't need more ounces. We just want to discover the highest quality of ounces, because later that entity of a strategic alliance will come at the table. And like I say, 50 cents US, I can't think of a better opportunity to get in on the ground floor on something so huge. Absolutely.
It does look like an amazing opportunity. And again, I have to repeat, we can't tell our audience what to do. I mean, legally, we can't do that, but we could certainly point people to the direction of Tudor Gold and let them make up their own minds. Ken, I was completely unaware, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, of the Tudor Gold story. I'm friends with your Director of Corporate Communications, Chris Curran, and he waved me over to meet you. I met you. I heard the story over a beer at an event, and I couldn't stop watching you, and I couldn't stop listening to you because of your passion and the size of this resource. And I know that the Golden Triangle in British Columbia, that entire province, is probably, if not the best jurisdiction in the world. It's right there on top. You've got infrastructure, everything's in place, but it wouldn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Without this kind of resource, you would just be another mining company attempting to tell a story. And I'm pleased to be able to help you do that.
Well, that's an excellent point that you brought up. Is the initial news when we came out with the initial resource, people heard about the story at the time and just wrote us off as being another deposit that just was going to be a low-grade deposit, wasn't going to go anywhere. The initial resource came out at 0.74 was the grade of gold equivalent. And our cutoffs were arguably low, 0.3, and which are currently being used, 0.3 in a pit and 0.46 underground, which is high for a sub-level block cave. It is a higher of a cutoff. But since that resource, every 2 years we've upgraded it, and this last one was a year of drilling, and what's happened is the resource has grown to 1.19 gold equivalent off of that 0.74. So mathematically, we've absolutely increased the inclination of that treadmill by increasing the cutoff, not only from the pit perspective of a 0.3 to a 0.5, is now at a 0.7, so double what we started with. And the underground cutoffs from a 0.46 is now standing at a 0.75. You could probably go higher and go up to the 1 gram cutoff if you want. And I welcome all the listeners out there to go onto our website to see the resource numbers and look at the various cutoffs and see the sensitivities. Because if you do go to a 1 gram cutoff, you've still got 15, 16 million ounces of drill indicated. It's amazing at a grade of 1.3 something, almost 1.4, with another 5 million ounces out there. So what we'll do at the end of the day is come right back to that original 19.4 million ounces, but no longer be at 0.74. Go as arguably close to a 1.4 gram average grade with a 1 gram cutoff, close to it. So you've doubled this thing. So how you do that is you trip through a bunch of 2 and 3 gram gold areas is what happens. So this deposit can be what you need it to be. It's got that variability in the core. It is extremely homogeneous, very consistent, but it does have richer portions that can be gone after. So again, this is part of the story that I want to tell. The passion is just naturally occurring because it is such a compelling story. I've never seen anything like it in my 40 years of tromping around the globe looking for these things. And here's one of possibly four. There are three other entities out there. One is called Calm Before the Storm to the northeast of it. One exact equidistance between the Iron Cap deposit at Seabridge's Iron Cap deposit and the Goldstorm deposit. Equidistant is the perfect storm. I call it the perfect structural storm because it is in line with my old friend Brucejack Lake fault. And there's where I predicted a chance find for a Valley of the Kings because it was on that fault. That was an initial discovery back in 2009 was given to the credit of being on the east side of that fault. Likewise, I think the same geological occurrence may happen for us at Perfect Storm. We've already got several holes into it. We stopped drilling because we want to put all our chips on the one big racehorse called Goldstorm, literally, and put everything on that. So even though we've got drill holes that are 102 meters of 1.28 grams gold sitting there at Perfect Storm, likewise, similar numbers at Calm Before the Storm, we're going to finish this playoff first and see what happens. So the center core claims are what we're absolutely riddling with drill holes this moment. So we hope to have some results out shortly. I think it'll be a nice surprise to see if we hit more high grade along the way. We've already hit visible native gold in the first drill hole out of the gate in an area that was unknown to anyone on the expansion on the step out. So all good news, all great news going forward.
Well, Ken, every other time I reach out to you, you're out in the field, you're on site, you're working, you're no slouch.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's my wheelhouse, right? I've got hands built for breaking rock, that's for sure. And done it all my life. I've had numerous discoveries, but nothing like this. Like there's absolutely zero of all the things that I've come across that prepared me for what I was about to see out of a drill hole. You have to imagine some of the biggest structures of the planet. Like the one I use in North America is the CN Tower in Toronto. When you see that tower is 558 meters. We've got composites that are 3 times that. Can you imagine 3 times the height of the CN Tower is the size? It's over 1,500 meters, these composites. It's absolutely insane to see the immense size that's still growing. This universe is expanding. I may not be able to drill this off in my lifetime because we're going to choose to concentrate on the best looking, say 15 to 20 million ounces and go for the permitting, go for the economics of the thing and see what comes out in the next stage of the evolution of this project, which is a preliminary economic assessment in the form of a PEA. So everything that the language we're using is production language. We'll be going towards one of the biggest shocking untold stories.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you for sponsoring this program and trusting us to help get the word out. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you again. Thank you so much for joining us today in the program. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity again, Ellis, and we will be in touch with giving you updates with drill holes as they come out for sure. But again, thanks for the opportunity.
I've been speaking with Ken Tonkin, the president and CEO of Tudor Gold. Tudor Gold trades on the TSX Venture Exchange as TUD, and in the U.S. on the OTC as TDRRF. The company's website is tudor-gold.com. I'm Ellis Martin, and this is Money Talk Radio.